All righty, welcome back to another episode of Two Plain Sports. Today, it's another week of Sooner football. Believe it or not, Oklahoma will play football on Saturday despite losing the last 2 weeks. Most people would think the world was ending and OU football would be canceled for the rest of the year. They might as well forfeit at this point. But contrary to popular belief, OU will show up Saturday evening in Norman, play on the Palace in the Prairie, and try to get back in the winning column, which I think they will. That's a little hint.
Yep.
I believe we all three think that. So, but before we talk about that, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 6,100 subscribers. I think we're 88 people away as we're recording this. So if you're new here or if you've been here often, just hit the subscribe button. It's free and easy. Turn the notification bell on. We go live every Tuesday evening at 8:30 p.m. Central. And also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything is linked in the description below. So OU's coming in back-to-back losses. One to Oklahoma State, one to Kansas. Really unfortunate. West Virginia's coming in on a 2-game winning streak after beating Central Florida and BYU. So total opposites. OU 7-2, West Virginia 6-3. This is a game that, being at home, Oklahoma gets to play under the lights. Believe it or not, the Big 12 is allowing them to play a night game. Oklahoma needs to show up. Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be back home. I think it feels like it's been forever. I know it's only been 2 weeks since we've been back in Norman, but it just feels like it's been a lot longer than that. Obviously, two really, really tough, heartbreaking losses on the road that you feel you could have easily won both of those games and be playing 9-0 in this game right now back home against West Virginia. But, it's not the way the cards played out for us this season, unfortunately. But, there's still, as Drake Stoops talked about, there's still a lot of the season to play for. There's a lot of things that can happen. I predicted on the live stream on Tuesday that I think this team will play in the Big 12 title game if they win out. I still think that happens. I think they'll get the help they need if they win out. I think being at home is going to be big. They're going to be, just having the support, being in a prime time situation. I think it's going to be close at first. You'll pull away and win by a couple scores, and I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Brum, these are teams that are coming off very different last couple of games. One has a lot of momentum behind them, and the other one's trying to break some bad habits, that being Oklahoma. I mean, we talked about it again in the live stream. The thing that killed Oklahoma, outside of some offensive blunders in the play calling, is at the end of the day, you can't turn the ball over. The last 2 games, I think each game they've had 3 turnovers. In the last game, 2 of them could have been very easily avoided. Javonte Barnes just falls on the ball, and Rain, hopefully focuses a little bit more. The home crowd should help out. Hasn't really been an issue at home where he's snapping the ball when DG isn't anticipating it. You gotta protect the football. That is the key to the game. The defense, if they show up as they have every single game this year, even if they do have those little bits of bad defense and poor tackling, for the most part, they've been able to come up with plays when they need to. I mean, against Kansas, Ethan Downs gets that pick. In this last game against Oklahoma State, Billy Bowman getting the pick and then getting 6 straight stops against Oklahoma State. They're creating opportunities for the offense. The big story, I think, for Oklahoma is which offense is going to show up. Are we going to see the one from the first 6 games and hopefully what we saw against Texas, or is it going to be what we've seen for the last 2 and one that makes way too many mistakes, not capitalizing when the defense is giving you opportunities to take the lead and start separating yourself? And I think one thing that should benefit Oklahoma is we're not playing Oklahoma State again, or a team that's going to fake an injury every time you start gaining a little bit of rhythm. So hopefully that picks up.
I agree 100% with your take on the offense, and I think you want to see the good offense show back up. Defensively, I kind of disagree. I think the Oklahoma State defense, or the team that played against Oklahoma State, that defense I thought they were really, really, really sound. They did a great job keeping IU in the game. You mentioned the 6 straight stops, the Billy Bowman pick. I think that defense was good against Kansas. I think for the most part, that was a pretty poor defensive performance. I think the tackling was bad. We allowed a whole bunch of rushing yards, like a huge yards per carry average for Kansas. The silver lining of that Kansas game was, as you just mentioned, they made big stops when they had to have them, big turnovers when they had to have them. But I think defensively as a whole against Kansas, it was not very strong, and I hope that defense doesn't show up against Westphal, because old Garrett Green can run too a little bit, and that scares me a little bit.
And looking at this team as a whole and the season as a whole, it feels like right now OU is spiraling right now. It seems like the world is ending. A lot of fans obviously are voicing their season's over and all this stuff and issues, and it just seems like it's all doom and gloom. The one thing I will point at, last year, OU was 0-5 from one possession games. OU this year is 2-2 in one possession games. Granted, they've lost the last two, but there is improvement there. And so I think we're in the middle of a rebuild. This is what a rebuild is, unfortunately. Obviously we don't want to go through a rebuild as, OU fans and, University of Oklahoma. We should never have to go through a rebuild, right? But in reality, you kind of do. And I think this is a part of them maturing and getting better, where you can come off two really rough losses and try to put it all together and get back on track. Because sometimes I think they had a little bit of the hangover from Kansas. And the more I've thought about the game, Oklahoma State, I felt like sometimes the team was a little too tight and a little nervous because they were trying to be perfect after losing to Kansas, because they realized, oh my gosh, we can't lose another game. We can't mess this up. And I think they were playing. I just think they weren't relaxed and focused. And I think Javonte Barnes was worried about, trying to be perfect, being on the field and like, oh my gosh, I'm carrying the ball. I think part of that is the maturation process that they're going through of trying to learn how to bounce back after a rough loss. I mean, it's hard to go perfect every single season. I mean, most teams do not. You normally drop one game a year, and sometimes you get two or three teams that don't. So I think this is a game where you come home, you're playing at night. Oklahoma is playing West Virginia, who's not as talented as them. They should clearly beat them. They're a 13-point favorite. Vegas agrees. I think this is where Oklahoma can show that they can take that next step, where they can bounce back after a couple, a rough patch. And I think that's part of the process, and I'd like to see that happen. I hope they do. And I think they will.
Yeah. I don't think it's so much a rebuild, it's more so the maturation of this team. You mentioned it during the live stream, and you mentioned it just now as well a little bit. They're very young. When you look at the more impactful players, you've got, Dasan McCullough is really just a second-year player, just like Jaren Kanak. He's just, I think, for Dasan's sake and to his credit, he's just a more naturally talented guy at that position. Jaren's still learning. Kip, to start this last game against Oklahoma State, it was his first time starting for Oklahoma. Probably a little bit of nerves, settling into that starting role. Hopefully we see Danny Stutzman back. I think that'll help a lot, even if Kip Lewis does play some. Danny Stutzman being there will help plenty, both with vocal leadership and just in during the Bedlam game, they were saying it on TV, like he's kind of the Energizer Bunny of this defense. He's going to be the guy that gets everyone going. So that should help. Even if he can only play like 50% of the snaps, then you got Kip Lewis that is going to be there to back him up. West Virginia, though, I think the biggest thing that you've got to worry about, in my opinion, is going to be Garrett Green and his legs. Not the greatest passer. He does know how to avoid making mistakes. Only has 2 picks on the year. But on the flip side, like I mentioned, not the greatest passer. He's only completed 53% of his passes, thrown for about 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns. So, he can make plays, but he's not super efficient. So his legs are going to be the most dangerous thing. And again, that goes back to the linebackers. Can they keep him contained? Can the guys on the defensive line make sure that they're keeping contained? Don't get beat. First of all, don't let the tackles set the edge for the run game. CJ Donaldson's very, very talented as well. He's no Ollie Gordon, but he can make big plays on the ground when he has to.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, just making sure. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not Ollie Gordon. They can run the ball. I mean, the last 4 games, you pointed out before we started recording, West Virginia's averaging like 35, 36, 37 points a game in the last 4 games. Granted, competition has been great, but OU has also played Central Florida. It's a common opponent, and they handled Central Florida better than we did. So they do have the ability to, compete and, give OU a run for their money. I think a key is, can you get Danny Stutzman back? Pairing him up with Kip Lewis would be great. I think Danny Stutzman would help the morale and the attitude of this team. I think Garrett Green is going to be the biggest X factor. It's like every mobile quarterback in that OU's played in the last 5-10 years. It's always a mobile quarterback that hurts. And Garrett Green hurt us last year. He had like 115 yards-ish, somewhere in there, and a touchdown rushing. If he can run, OU's in trouble. That really is the key of the game. If you can contain Garrett Green and make him beat you with his arm, you should be able to win. And it's just the mobile quarterback has always come back to haunt Oklahoma.
I think the Central Florida common game thing, I think that kind of goes back to, because I agree they beat Central Florida in a better fashion than we did, but I think that goes back to what you talked about, and you brought up the Kansas game as where, they, or the Oklahoma State game or whatever, where they're starting to try to play too perfect. They can't lose. They can't do that. I would argue that you could say that about this team coming off that bye week against Central Florida. They're 6-0. Just beat Texas. They're number 5 or 6 in the country at that point in time. I can't remember exactly where they were in the AP poll. But they're thinking undefeated. They're trying to be perfect from that point. They're not playing the same 6 weeks that we saw. It seemed to be a totally different team. And I think he mentioned on the live stream, and with 2 losses now, they're not playing for a national title. The big goal is gone. So I think they will play a lot more free. I think, I think you said that there's no pressure on them anymore, which, there pretty much is no more pressure. As far as the big goal's gone, just go out there and fly around, play. Garrett Green is going to be, I agree with what you guys are saying, but I mean, I don't know. I just think with 2 losses, we're going to see more of that aggressive style approach that we saw the first 6 weeks. I mean, the Kansas game, I think is the biggest example of just playing not to lose, and I feel like they've been doing that since the bye. And that should end now. We should play to win again.
That would be smart. And then for the we've talked about Garrett Green. They're one guy on the offense outside of Garrett that could become a little bit of a matchup issue is their tight end, Cole Taylor. Almost, I think their second leading receiver. Guy can make plays, decent blocker. Neil Brown was talking about it in his press conference. There's still a lot for him to fix. I think when you look at him, he's tall in stature, 6'7", 250. Someone that definitely can be moved around, though, by our defensive line. If he ever is in the box trying to block, they really shouldn't have much issue getting around him for a tight end, not the biggest guy, right? When you look at the West Virginia defense, they get their their hand on the ball a lot, and it's more specifically Beanie Brown, I think it was his name. We talked about him before the live, or Beanie Bishop, sorry. He has 17 pass deflections and 4 picks. That guy, when the ball is anywhere near him, he's going to make sure he makes it hard on that wide receiver. I'm not sure if I haven't watched too much of West Virginia. I don't know if he's someone that will shadow one specific receiver, if he stays on one side of the field, but either way, that side of the field I think is safe just by looking at the stats. going to be, I'm going to go ahead and assume that Dylan Gabriel is going to want to get the ball out quick when he's going after that side of the field or going after whoever Bishop is covering. Because if you take a little bit of stutter, second guess what you're doing, like you did against Kansas on that pick six, he's at least going to get his ball in the hand and make it an incompletion. It could get dangerous because Bishop does have quite a bit of return yardage on those picks. But even outside of him, they have a total of 44 pass deflections. Like as a unit, they're all on the defensive side. They can get their ball in their hand when the ball's up for grabs, or the hand on the ball when it's up for grabs.
Bishop's a third of those, which is crazy. He's also their third leading tackler. I think without watching any West Virginia, it's probably safe to assume he's one of, if not their best defensive players. But I think if you play to avoid him, or stress too much about where he's at on the field, you're playing to lose again. And I don't know. I think you should not do that. You should just attack.
Got to make sure you know where he's at.
Yep, just go after it. So, do you guys have some final score predictions here? Remember, the line is 13 points.
I was about to ask.
Westfall's got. I mean, they got some dudes. They're a weird team, I guess. I don't know. Their leading receiver's at like 415 yards, and their second leading receiver is the tight end, as Colt as Hose mentioned, but it's only got 300 yards. Their leading running back is solid. He's no Ollie Gordon, but he's solid. He's got almost 700 yards. Their second leading rusher is Garrett Green. So like they're not their depth, I guess, is not the strongest. And I think they should be out. Like I said, I think it's going to be close to start the game, for a half or whatever. It'll be a one-score game, 10-point game, whatever. And I think Oklahoma eventually pulls away. I'm going OU by like 17. Let's do like a 34-17 type game, Sooners.
I'm going to go... See, I think that if it is a close game to start, then it could get dangerous for Oklahoma. At least enough where West Virginia is going to keep it close and cover. But assuming that, I like to bet on, when I'm gambling, usually I'm betting on the team that has kind of been talked down over the last week. And I think Oklahoma is that team right now after taking 2 losses in a row to teams that they should have and could have beaten in those games. Hopefully Levy fixes some of those issues with getting a rhythm early in the game. That would be ideal for Oklahoma. I would say final score is going to be like 38 24 Oklahoma.
That was literally my score prediction, Hose. Literally, that's what I had in my mind. I got to be different. I'm going to say Oklahoma. I'm going to be more optimistic. Oklahoma 42, West Virginia 27. 42-27 Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma cracks 40 points. So, anyway, individual challenge, Brandon?
West Virginia predictions. Obviously, it's a preview video. If you guys are going to be there, comment that you'll be there. I plan on being there this weekend. And also comment your thoughts on the Big 12 title run that I think is going to happen. Am I crazy for that, or do you guys also have the same belief?
Definitely. All right, you made it this far. Be sure to subscribe. We're like 88 subscribers away, I think, somewhere around there. So on the way to 6,100, help us out. Hit that button. Turn the notification bell on because we go live every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Central. And then follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. Catch you guys next time.